Yeah, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. TasPorts is actually quite a new partner with the TIER program, so we're really keen to further our knowledge of the Tamar estuary. It's not something we've done a lot of in the past. I'm here with my colleague today, Scott McLeod as well. There's three of us that work in the environment space at TasPorts. Now I'm going to have the trouble of... Oh, yep, good. That's better than... I got a new laptop yesterday, and this morning I went to turn it on. I couldn't even find the on button, so... embarrassed to say. Yeah, look, to start with, I thought... what I thought we'd do today is just share a little bit of information about TasPorts and what we do. It tends to be a bit of an invisible organisation to some. It certainly was to me before I started working there. So, and also really just to give an overview of our approach to environmental management at TasPorts, starting with a little bit of a look at our learnings from the past, at what we're currently doing, and our priorities for the future. So just first of all, in terms of what TasPorts does, TasPorts is a state-owned corporation and they're responsible for basically owning and providing the port facilities across all of Tasmania, including the island. So TasPorts has 11 port facilities, and that includes the Devonport Airport, which is a little anomaly. The others are all maritime or shipping ports. There's the four major ports. So Bell Bay in the Tamar estuary is, of course, one of those four major ports, the other three being Hobart, Devonport and Burnie. I guess the main activities that TasPorts does is really, or responsibility for, is ensuring the safe navigation of vessels into ports. So there's a team of marine services, pilots, tug vessels. That's probably our primary responsibility, and managing security and vessel safety over communications. So that's definitely a core part. We own the land and the infrastructure, so we're responsible for maintaining the wharf infrastructure, and also just responsibilities of owning land where you're bringing in materials and exporting materials. So 99% of the freight that comes in and out of Tassie does so through TasPorts ports. And just a little bit more zooming in on the area of our focus today. So TasPorts locations that we I guess operate or have some activity in the Tamar, you won't be able to see or read all the points, but hopefully some can see some of those. Obviously the main activity area is the Bell Bay Port, located in the Bell Bay Industrial area. The pilot station is actually located out at Low Head, so that's where they launch the pilot boats from. And the pilot boarding ground is out in the what you would refer to as the very lower reaches of the estuary. We also own some land around Garden Island, which there are aquaculture activities. We just lease that land to an operator there. And we also own some wharf infrastructure at Longreach. And there's also what we would refer to as a community-based port at Inspection Head, but that's also the home of our tug vessels. So the tugs launch or operate out of Inspection Head and go and meet the ships as they come in through the lower estuary. So that's just a little bit about the areas that we operate in around the Tamar. About 10% of the vessel movements in Tasmania would be in and out of Bell Bay. It's not the busiest, but it is one of the major ports, and it's responsible for about 25% of the export materials out of Tasmania go out of Bell Bay. mostly from the Bell Bay Industrial Zone, but also including wood chips, logs. We bring in fuel through Bell Bay as well for the state. Most of the major ports have a fuel receival facility. What else is there? And some general freight container freight that comes into Bell Bay. That's enough a bit about the general stuff. Let's take a bit of a look into, I guess, our approach to environmental management, and starting with the past. We had a fabulous series of photos earlier showing a lot of the historical areas operating the ports from the upper areas of the estuary. Basically, from about 1954 was when the current port at Bell Bay began. So TasPorts only formed in 2005, and prior to that it was basically individual port authorities, being the Marine Board of Launceston, I think it was called. So in 1954 the Marine Board started operating the port at Bell Bay, and it's a number of years after that when TasPorts, in its current form, existed, as each of those port authorities joined. I would say that really a lot of what we do now has grown out of the learnings of the past, and that goes from a pure operational point of view, but also from an environmental management point of view as well. I'm sure it's no different in many organisations, that we learn from our experiences of the past and we apply that, and that comes through in regulation and all sorts of things. So when I think about the past and the environmental management of TasPorts, it's really coming from being separate port entities. Another common thing for many Tasmanian-based organisations where they've probably grown out of fragmented organisations and become one. So that tends to sort of carry through a little bit in some of the operations, or some of our knowledge, in that it is a little fragmented, and we're still working to get better at working as one. Definitely our environmental standards and systems have developed out of our learnings, and so perhaps in the past very reactive. When things go wrong, we need to manage them, and we develop systems and put in place practices to try and prevent those from happening again. Definitely our knowledge of the surrounding environment. So one of the things that we're realising now is that our knowledge of the environments in which we operate the ports is probably a result of, like, on a needs basis. So if there's been project work in the past and we need to understand what potential impacts may be, there's been a lot of work done. But if there hasn't been a lot of need for growth and development and project work, we may not know a lot about that port, that natural environment. And so that's another thing that we're definitely aware of. And yes, definitely, I've mentioned it a couple of times, but our port environments are definitely impacted by legacy activities of the past. The intro mentioned contaminated soils. The port areas are generally, unfortunately, quite contaminated sites just through past activities. Hobart used to be an oil refinery, and so there's a legacy environmental things that need to be managed as part of that. One in particular, which is very relevant to the Tamar, and I'm sure some of you or many of you in the room have had some knowledge or perhaps even involvement with it. But one of the most significant incidents that did occur in the Tamar was the grounding of the Iron Barren off Hebe Reef. This is something that definitely helped form a lot of the regulatory changes, shipping safety, and also TasPorts' role in oil spill response. So I just thought it would be good to share briefly. But this was a vessel that was bringing in ore into Bell Bay Industrial Zone, and it unfortunately came aground on Hebe Reef, which, if I can go back, if is on the map there out the entrance to the Tamar estuary. Basically, it resulted in about 300 tonnes of heavy fuel oil being released into the environment, and pretty much triggered the largest cleanup exercise in, I think, Australia-wide still, and definitely had, also involved a really extensive wildlife rescue and rehabilitation. The Marine Board at the time were really heavily involved in running that incident response, and a lot of changes came out of that occurrence. So some of those things are not all purely environmental, but interesting to know nonetheless. Basically, from there, the shipping control processes really changed. So the pilot boarding ground was actually moved further out to require a pilot to be on board and guide shippings in safely at all times. So that was a key change. We moved the pilot boarding ground further out to Low Head, where it currently exists. Regulations changed as well. So TasPorts is actually designated as a oil spill response authority under a deed of agreement with the EPA and MAST. So that's something that we have quite a formal role in responding to oil spill response in and around the port areas. Okay, just moving on to the present. So these days, we like to think that we're getting a little better at being proactive and a little less reactive, and certainly avoiding, disastrous incidents. At the moment, we're really driven by a mandate in our corporate plan, which is we uphold maritime and environmental standards through sustainable methods and practices. I'll show you what that comprises of in the next couple of slides, but essentially, the areas of environmental aspects for the Port of Bell Bay and also some of the other ports, it is quite diverse. Certainly one that is front of mind and certainly a priority for us these days is our role in management of marine and even terrestrial biosecurity. So marine pests and general pest incursions into the state is a really important aspect, and also definitely a reason why, I guess a good opportunity for our partnership with TIER in we have teams of people who are on the water every day, and maybe there's an opportunity to leverage some of that to increase our understanding and knowledge and frontline response to marine pests. Thank you. Yeah, I better keep moving. A whole range of other things. Oil spill is definitely, one of our key top risks that require ongoing management. Our current focuses at the moment, one of the things that we're really working hard on is trying to achieve an eco-port standard. Eco-ports is a port-specific environmental standard. It's a sort of global reference point, so it's something we're working hard to develop overall standards to be able to be certified to eco-ports. We now have a good idea of where our gaps are in environmental baseline information. So in Bell Bay in particular, we have identified a number of areas that we would like to improve our baseline knowledge. So one of TasPorts' commitments is that we will establish an environmental baseline including the marine environment every 5 years, which helps us basically benchmark over time, but also understand the environment in which we operate as well. definitely establishing minimum standards across TasPorts overall, so governance is really important, and we've got 5 key environmental standards at the moment. In terms of the future and where we're heading, I mentioned the EcoPorts certification. That is something we're on a pathway to achieving. We've got our first commitment for Port of Devonport actually next year to try and achieve the EcoPort standard, but we are aiming to put that in place for all of our 4 major ports. We're continuing to develop new standards, and they are common standards that apply to all of our port locations. So previous ones have been noise, bulk handling in regards to dust, wildlife, protection of wildlife. What do we accept and what we don't accept as a minimum standard at TasPorts, and getting that sort of common understanding across the whole organisation. Partnerships, it's actually a key part of the EcoPorts process. Partnerships, understanding the communities in which we operate in, and so we're very keen to continue to work collaboratively with TU, but other organisations and community groups. Climate change, adaptation and mitigation, certainly the wharf infrastructure, and ensuring that our wharf infrastructure is resilient and able to deal with the ongoing changes in climate as well. And I know I've got to wrap this up very quickly, so I'm trying to scoot along. The 4th area of focus for our future is really growing our knowledge and understanding of marine pests, and the role that our TasPort staff can play in that space, and really growing our understanding of environmental values in the ports that we operate in. So that's pretty much it. Better finish before I get run off the stage.